Richard Nixon actually right when he said, when a president does it, that means it's not illegal? Well, a judge may have just said in one very specific and important way that, yeah, he might be right. Tonight, Sarah Wallace says that Donald Trump gets to stay on the ballot in Colorado. This, despite the judge finding and saying in pretty plain English that Donald Trump engaged in an insurrection.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about the mainstream liberal media, in this case, CNN, coping and seething with the reality that Trump has basically won out in Colorado against an attempt to remove him from the ballot. Now, all of you guys should be aware of the grassroots attempts by the far leftists to overthrow democracy by removing Trump from the ballot in 2024 because they're especially afraid that Trump is going to beat Biden in 2024, which is what the polls suggest. Now, in an attempt to stop that from happening, again, these people are trying to do something that they claim they're fighting against, which is to overthrow and subvert democracy by removing Trump from the ballot. Now, up until now, those attempts have not been successful. And this is just one of many attempts that, at least as of now, have been smacked down by the courts. But this one is particularly interesting because the judge ruled in this case involving the 14th Amendment. Okay, they're trying to have Trump removed from the ballot because they're arguing that he committed an insurrection. And based off the reading of the 14th Amendment, therefore, Trump is disqualified from being able to hold office. Okay, that's the argument that's being made. The judge, in this case, in response to that argument, found that although Trump did incite an insurrection, according to her, okay, although there's nobody that's been formally charged criminally for an insurrection, right, or anything like that, but this is what she's saying. The judge said, although I believe that he incited an insurrection, under Article 3 of the 14th Amendment, we don't believe that that actually applies to the President of the United States, okay? Particularly the part when it talks about barring officers, okay, from the United States government or people from being in Congress. That was never intended to apply to the President of the United States, okay? And of course, the mainstream liberal media is upset, right? People like CNN, Kaitlan Collins here, they're gonna cope over this judge's ruling that unfortunately, again, for them, Trump stays on the ballot. So she's talking to a Trump lawyer about this, and I wanna react to it.
Is this something that you expect? I mean, the other side, we do expect the plaintiffs to appeal it here. If that happens, what's your argument going to be to the Colorado Supreme Court?
Well, I'm almost certain that the plaintiffs are going to appeal this case. We'll argue to the Colorado Supreme Court a lot of the same arguments we made before, which is the textual and historical analysis of the 14th Amendment, especially, considering the fact that the way our Constitution is set up, the way our republic is set up, is people get to choose who gets to be their president. We shouldn't have courts striking people from the ballot. We're also going to, fully take on the court's erroneous argument that President Trump engaged in an insurrection. We think that's just flat out wrong, certainly contrary to the evidence. It was a little bit unusual for her to spend a lot of time talking about that and then at the end rule that the 14th Amendment didn't apply.
Why do you think she did have that?
Well, first...
Why do you think, Scott, that the judge here did add those 100 pages of her, going into detail about the role that she believed your client played in January 6th?
Because she's a political activist with no cojones, right? That's why, okay? She's a Democrat operative. She's clearly a liberal activist judge that decided to inject her opinion. Oh, in my opinion, I think that he committed insurrection. But, hey, I'm not going to remove him from the ballot, okay? Even though I do think that he committed an insurrection. How does that make sense? Well, in my mind, this person either doesn't have the cojones to go all the way with this, right? To go all the way with setting the precedent of removing somebody from the ballot, even though, she thinks that Trump committed an act of insurrection. And, hey, I guess you can make arguments about what the framers meant when they crafted the 14th Amendment, Section 3. However, hey, that's an argument to be made in court, right? Where they're going to keep, appealing and challenging it. And she could have been the first judge to say, nope, Trump removed from the ballot. I think that personally, she didn't have the cojones to do that, right? Who knows? She may not also believe that it was an actual insurrection. Okay, I think anybody with common sense knows that that was not an actual insurrection. Okay, but she may not actually really believe that. She could just be saying that to, again, throw some red meat out there to Democrats and liberals and say, oh, well, a judge said that Trump committed an act of insurrection. But she's not willing to take it a step further. Okay.
Well, I think pretty clearly she is not a fan of President Trump. But to be honest with you, normally courts will rule on the jurisdictional issues, will rule whether the law applies before going into all of that. So it's really sort of a backwards way of going into it compared to how courts normally do it. Maybe she just wanted to be able to say that. I don't really know her motivations along those lines. But at the end of the day, it's, the voters of Colorado are going to be able to make the choice, not a court. And we're thankful that she respected the role of voters and stopped these sort of efforts, or at least the effort in Colorado, which is anti-democratic, trying to strike President Trump off the ballot.
But given the fact that she does go into such detail and is now the first judge to ever say that Donald Trump engaged in an insurrection, do you still really view this as a win here?
Boy, talk about COPE, right? Talk about COPE. Well, do you really view this as a win, considering how she did say he engaged in an act of insurrection? Well, nobody cares about the judge's opinion as much as people care about the fact that Trump is still on the ballot, right? Now, again, the judge inserts her activist opinion, but her actual judgment rules that Trump can stay on the ballot. So, yeah, of course it's a win, right? Of course it's a W, okay? But again, what an honest news media would be asking questions about is whether or not, again, it's democratic for these liberal organizations, these liberal activist groups to be trying to remove somebody from the ballot. When clearly, again, they haven't been charged with any act of insurrection or anything like that, right? They have not been criminally charged, okay? Haven't been convicted. And, you're trying to remove somebody and take away people's rights or freedoms in regards to who they can vote for. That's what this real conversation should be about. They should now be questioning these groups and these frivolous lawsuits that are being brought to these courts by these groups trying to subvert democracy. Again, they were so upset about that when Trump was doing that, right? After the election. They were like, oh, these lawsuits are trying to subvert democracy. They're frivolous. What happened to all that, right? What happened to all that? Apparently, it's totally fine for left-wing groups to file these frivolous lawsuits that keep, getting smacked down in court in an attempt to undermine democracy. Amazing. The double standard is amazing.
We can't stop the judge from saying things like that and still ruling in our favor. But I will tell you, she also said that the First Amendment protections don't apply to President Trump the way they do to everyone else. And we think that's flat wrong. So there are a lot of problems with that analysis. Maybe that will wind up contesting it, maybe not, depending on how the appeal comes out. But at the end of the day, she ruled for us, and properly so. And this, is her opinion on what happened. But it has no legal authority at all because of her ruling. The way
but I guess some people would
exactly. It's an opinion, right? It's an opinion. The actual ruling is in Trump's favor. But again, they want to focus on the opinion, right? Judge's opinion. Trump committed an insurrection. Okay, but what was the ruling? Has it been criminally charged? No. Again, it's insane.
Read this and see where she says that he acted with specific intent to incite political violence, directed at the Capitol, that he not only knew about the potential for violence, but that he actively promoted it and incited it on January 6, 2021. And they'll say, okay, yes, he is staying on the ballot, but the judge also is tying him to all of this activity, saying that he was responsible for what happened that day, and ask how this is a victory for the Trump team.
Look, part of the problem with that analysis is that what she did is she took the January 6th report, which was a wholly one-sided approach used to attack President Trump directly and politically. And she imported that whole thing into the case itself. She viewed that as reliable, which is, I think most reasonable people would view that as absurd. And so she relied upon that to make some of those
decisions. There are people who would not agree with that.
The foundation of that
Scott?
is rotten. I'm sorry?
There are people, yes, there are some people who do not like the January 6th report. There are a lot of people who believe its findings.
Well, the January 6th report is a joke. It is very one-sided, okay? They didn't show all of the people who were peacefully walking into the Capitol and getting escorted around by police. But again, like this guy said, look, at the end of the day, this judge clearly doesn't like Trump. She goes out and she, says that, he engaged in insurrection, but she won't remove him from the ballot, right? And now, Democrats and the liberal media are going to turn around and say, but her opinion is that he committed an act of insurrection, right? That's what you're going to focus on. Instead of focusing on the fact that, again, you actively have people that are trying to undermine and overthrow democracy in this country. And these are the same people that claim they love democracy so much. When these lawsuits get smacked down, they continue to get smacked down. They're not asking questions about what is the merit of this, right? Does this actually really make sense? Is this what we're doing here? Is this what we're doing, trying to remove people from the ballot? So yeah, this is a W here for Trump because once again, they fail and they will appeal and they'll retry, and I think it will keep failing, right? Because again, clearly this is just nonsense. This is grifting. This is money-raising operation from Trump deranged liberals in this country, and also Trump deranged Republicans and conservatives as well too. That's all this is. And, I expect these lawsuits to continue to go nowhere, but who knows? Okay, maybe we'll get some surprises here in the future. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.